นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนะมัสสามิ Blessings, good evening. Sometimes when the Buddha was alive, he would refer to himself as the happiest person in the world. Sometimes he would refer to himself as the awakened one. And he had a few other ways of describing who he was. The Buddha is, or the qualities, the nature of the enlightened mind, they say, it's not possible for the Buddha to deceive somebody or lie. So if he said, I'm happy, then he was speaking the truth. It was just saying the way things are. Or referring to himself as the awakened one, it's just referring to the way things are, that his mind is fully awakened. That means awakened from the delusions that cause the human being suffering. So fully awakened. Self-enlightened is another way we refer to the Buddha. So even though he did have teachers along the way in his spiritual journey, he was self-enlightened. In the end, he had to go off and practice for himself. So when we reflect on the Buddha or recollect the Buddha, these are the qualities we're recollecting. The great peace, happiness, the state of being awakened or awakening to the truth, and also compassion for other beings, for everyone else. Because before the Buddha was a Buddha, he was what we call a bodhisattva, who was dedicated to practicing for enlightenment, not only for his own benefit, but for the benefit of all sentient beings. And so coming down to this day and age, 2,565 years, give or take a year, since the enlightenment of the Buddha, we are still benefiting from his teachings. Because what he awakened to, or got enlightened by realizing, was the truth. And he described it as the Four Noble Truths: suffering, its cause, the end of suffering, and the path that leads to the end of suffering. But we're still benefiting today from his enlightenment experience or his awakening. Just attest to the quality of those teachings, the wisdom, the truth contained in the teachings and the truth that they point to. So he wasn't enlightened just for himself, his own benefit, even though he said in the beginning he had that thought. After his enlightenment experience, he thought what he had realized was so difficult that maybe other people wouldn't be able to practice it or understand it for themselves. But then out of compassion, he did start to teach for the benefit of those, we say, with little dust in their eyes. So next time you're in dusty weather and you get dust in your eyes, you're taking the dust out of your eyes, preparing yourself for the Dhamma. the truth. Really, that's what you're doing when you meditate. You're developing mindfulness, clarity, and the reflective nature of the mind. This is really taking the dust out of your eyes so that you can see and accept the truth. Because when we really open our minds up to the truth, this is where liberation comes from. This is where suffering ends. When you can see, accept the way things are. Much of our life is kind of a battle, or feels like a battle or struggle, because the mind doesn't accept the truth. And we're kind of fighting against it, resisting it, wishing things would be some other way than they are, expecting and hoping that things would be different, because we don't yet fully accept the truth of things. So the practice of developing the Eightfold Path, and particularly meditation, mindfulness, and then wisdom, preparing the mind to see and accept the truth, to know it with our heart, not just as a memory from hearing other people talk or describe the truth or reading about it, but to know for ourselves. So they say the gift of Dhamma is the greatest gift, better than any other gift. And that's what the Buddha gave us, gave the world, gave all beings, quite freely, openly. He gave the Dhamma for people with little dust in their eyes to take away and practice with, and have their own realization, free themselves from suffering. And this theme runs through his teachings. You're developing your own practice and understanding for your own realization, to free yourself from suffering, but then the recognizing that this is also good for others. They go hand in hand. We help ourselves and help others at the same time. And sometimes helping others, we get our own realizations for that, and it helps us. One thing you notice as you help others is that other people often have the same kind of problems that we do, the same suffering, the kind of suffering that we do. They're subject to the same truths that we are. And so it gives you a different perspective on your own suffering, your own life. This evening we chanted, I am the nature to age, I've not gone beyond aging. I have the nature to sicken, I've not gone beyond sickness. I am of the nature to die, I've not gone beyond dying. Separation from everything I love and like is sure. And we say this is a frequent recollection. The Buddha said, frequently recollect these simple truths. And what it does is bring you in your mind and your experience in line with others. There's no one in this world who doesn't experience aging, sickness and death and separation from things they love and like. We all do. So wisdom and compassion are very close, aren't they? As you waken up to the truth in your own experience, then you tend to recognize it in other people. And following on from that, we tend to empathize and understand or be more sensitive to others by seeing ourselves, or sometimes seeing others first, and then we come back and look at ourselves and we realize, much the same. One thing you notice when you realize everybody is in the same sort of position, then you no longer wish to harm others. Why do we need to harm others? They're already suffering. They may not realize they're suffering, but they are. Everyone born into this world is exposed to aging, sickness and death, separation from all they love and like. We can't escape from those things in a normal sense. Normally people are trying to, by controlling their life and getting as much happiness, security, material wealth, and so on that they can to protect themselves from these kind of basic sufferings. But it's a bit of an endless and fruitless task. And this is where the Dhamma, practice of Dhamma, has so much more meaning and benefit for us, because it, rather than just trying to sort of, like when you're a kid, build a sandcastle or a wall on the beach to stop the sea coming in and then watch it get washed away, you turn your attention to something else that's more useful. So as you're practicing the Buddhist path, you're developing the qualities through sila, samadhi, panya that will last, that will resist even the sea, the ocean of the world, and all the problems the world can give us, and the problems of aging, sickness and death and separation. Something that will stand up to that and take us beyond it. That thing is probably wisdom, understanding, combined with compassion. So the Buddha wasn't deceiving us. He didn't say, I can give you something that will stop you getting old, stop you getting sick, or in the short term anyway. You can't do that. Once you're born, you're going to have these things sooner or later in one way or another. But he gave us something much more deeper and profound, a method, a way that we can live our lives and develop ourselves to deal with these basic truths and problems that we all face, and go beyond them by developing a higher understanding and knowing that we don't actually have to suffer with these things, aging, sickness and death. We can transcend them. And that's the purpose of the path, is to develop transcendental, transcendent wisdom and understanding. We still have our body, so we still get old and sick, and we feel hungry, we feel hot and cold. We go to work and we feel tired, and people sometimes treat us well and sometimes they don't. Sometimes the economy is going well, sometimes it's not. All kinds of things going on. We're still subject to that. But transcending these things comes through understanding on a deeper level that when we attach, when we cling with a sense of self, we suffer. If we have enough mindfulness to see the way things are and see through that, see through the attachment, see through the sense of self, we're free. The mind doesn't suffer. And this isn't some kind of deep, profound experience that you can only, hope for at some long, distant point in your life, or maybe some future life. It's something you can actually observe and understand quite quickly if you turn to pay attention, say, develop mindfulness and the reflective qualities of the mind. We can understand this quite quickly by seeing how we construct a sense of self and attachment to self through our experience on a daily basis, and start to see through that and maybe teach ourselves not to do that blindly or with delusion. And this is one of the miracles, we say, of mindfulness and wisdom. It's bringing us to see the truth rather than always following habits and stories and past conditioning, and we say karma. So like, for example, someone today, we were talking about dealing with anger, and then they were saying, well, the Buddha said there's no self, but when I get angry, I feel anger. I feel the pain, the suffering of it. It seems at that time there is a self. So this teaching of not self, how on earth do you apply it? How does it work? And I think many of us have this problem, don't you? You receive the teachings intellectually first, or you might even say the philosophy of the Buddha, or the theoretical teaching that all conditions, physical and mental phenomena, are impermanent, unsatisfactory, not self. This is what we call the basis for vipassana, developing insight. But then when we're having some painful experience, it doesn't seem to apply. I feel pain, I feel hunger, I feel sad, I feel disappointed, I feel angry. It seems that there's a self there who's experiencing this. So how do we get to the point where we can see something as powerful and disturbing to our experience as something like anger or any other powerful emotion? How do I get to the point where I actually can see it or know it as not self? Well, sometimes it can be quite quick. I mean, just earlier we were practicing mindfulness of breathing. So if you had the sharpness of mind, you might even say the cleverness of mind at the time when you're starting to feel angry in a situation, to turn to the breath, it might put a whole new perspective on it. It might help you to see there is a feeling there, you're not denying that. You have an unpleasant feeling caused by something or other coming to your experience. It could just be a memory of something bad that happened, something you didn't like, or it could be a direct sensory experience from outside. Somebody is doing something that you don't like, so an angry feeling starts to arise and you start thinking in a negative way. If you have enough sharpness at that moment, of sharpness of mind to say, turn to something else, turn to the breath, say, you can quite quickly maybe watch that anger subside in that situation. You're not feeding it, you're not making it worse, you're just knowing it. But as you become aware and know, in that moment, you hold that quality of awareness in the moment. Because you're not feeding it, the feeling starts to subside. The thoughts start to fade out because you're now turning to the breath. So something as simple as that, simple as turning to the breath, or could be some other meditation technique, other technique of mindfulness, is teaching you that that experience of anger in that situation is clearly impermanent because you're watching it fade away through your own efforts. And then you can ask the question is, well, where is the self in that? You can say, well, I was angry, so there was that experience. It's not that nothing happened, but it's now gone. If you keep doing that and you do it often enough, that kind of understanding sticks in your mind. This is what we call insight or wisdom, something that doesn't disappear over time. It stays with you, changes the way your mind looks at things. It may take a long time, a lot of effort, a lot of practice to do this, but we can all do that. We have that quality, these qualities, we have that ability. And little by little, as mindfulness becomes clearer and more continuous, and then that reflective power to see something, and we say, let it go, let it be, you might say. And then little by little, the mind is saying, that's not me. It's a thought, it's a feeling for sure that arises, but then it passes away. When it's passed away, it's ceased, it's extinguished like a fire going out. Well, that's it, it's ended right there. So it's not a self. And if you can do that over and over again, then you get used to the seeing things as not self. By knowing that they arise, they pass away. You get familiar with the causes, why you may get anger arise in a situation. Maybe there's triggers you've seen before, you kind of get familiar with the pathways of the mind, situations, people, certain memories, things that trigger it. Then you're also becoming aware of how you can see it cease from the mind by establishing mindfulness, maybe turning to the breath or something skillful like that. And you can see it cease. So you get, not only do you see it as impermanent, as not self, you also get familiar with the causes, the conditions that trigger it, support it. And you can become familiar with how to end it. So then this same person will say, well, who is it who does that? We're always asking this question, who is it? Who is it who is mindful? Who is it who knows? Who is it who's practicing vipassana? Who is it who's seeing anger fade? Well, you might go back further and say, why do you have to say who? Why do you have to ask that question? We're always phrasing or framing the question from the place that there must be somebody who is doing something. Maybe that's part of the problem. We keep re-establishing this self. Even when we do something good, like letting go of anger, then we come in and say, well, who did that good deed, that good thing of letting go of anger and seeing anger as not self? Who is that? We're always looking for a self because this way of viewing the world and viewing experience is so deeply ingrained in us. It's as if we can't accept not self because we still want there to be a self. Maybe it's the happy self, a good self. But true insight will even end that, the idea of a self at that point. Oh, there's me who lets go, there's me who's let go of anger. It's just letting go of anger. Anger arises and ceases. And we can also say, well, then there maybe is a self, but it's a kind of continuous process of getting angry and then letting it go, arising and ceasing. There's something there. Well, yeah, there are things there. There's physical phenomena, mental phenomena. But it's the idea of self, or the taking ownership, which is another aspect of self. This is me, this is mine. That's what's fading out from the experience. So how is it that we get to the transcend old age, sickness, death, separation, disappointment, suffering? Well, it's not taking hold of it or taking ownership of it, but just knowing it as conditioned experience. And we don't like to do that because we're so familiar with the sense of self. We keep building it up, holding on to it, wanting more. Maybe it's just a little bit of a doubt thing. Well, I can get rid of this suffering, but there has to be something left, the me in it. We're always looking for this me, this I. In a way that can help us because we're constantly trying to hold on to a sense of self, sense of me, I. Maybe we can use that to our advantage and just keep questioning our experience as we do that. And say, well, okay, you want there to be a self, even when you do good things, the right things, things that reduce your suffering. You want there to be a good self, say. Well, ask yourself, where is this self? Who really owns this experience? Who controls it? Who owns it? And just keep asking it every time that desire for a self, for there to be a self, comes up. Just keep asking the question. Is it in the body? If it's in the body, why does the body get old, sick, and die? Why do we have to let go of this body? That's probably the easiest place to look and transcend self in the beginning of practice. It's just see. Body is clearly made up of physical elements that come from the world, and we can't stop it changing on us, whether it's moment to moment or in the long term. So we have to stop grasping or taking ownership of the body. And that's something very useful to us. That's something good. That's coming from a place of wisdom, even compassion, because we want to free ourselves from suffering. So if you can see body is not me, mine, doesn't belong to me, you're doing something good. And that's probably the most obvious place to start, and just keep questioning, looking, what is it in this body that I really own is really me? Harder, but still doable, is feeling, vedana. Every feeling that we experience, just bring up the mindfulness and ask the question, do I own this? Is this me? As we meditate, we always have some aches and pains. Ask this question, is this painful feeling me? Is it really mine? Do I really own this? And sometimes you haven't even finished asking the question, already that feeling has changed on you. It's faded out. Sometimes it gets more intense. Sometimes it just disappears. When it disappears, where is it? Is it really self if it just disappears? It's another condition in your experience. It arises, passes away. And that's another thing to get in the habit of as you meditate. Feelings come up, aches and pains. Before you move, before you react, before you form an opinion about it, you don't like it, don't want it, just observe. Is this me? Is this mine? Is this self? Do I own it? Same with pleasure. We want to hang on to the pleasure and want to feel like this all day long once we're feeling good. But it'll fade before we know it. It's gone. It's not self. If we really owned it, we'd just keep it. We do that with the material world all the time. We claim ownership of buildings and cars and clothes and property and money and all the things of this world, constantly claiming ownership. When we turn our attention inwards, if the pleasures of life you really own, we'll just get them happening all the time. But we can't. The truth is there, kind of crying out to us for us to awaken to. The Buddha has pointed out, many teachers have pointed it out. We may even have seen it or known it ourselves in the past. So why do we keep getting fooled again and taking ownership and saying, I want this, I want to keep this? Our mind is not in line with the truth again. So these are tools for investigation. Establishing mindfulness, looking at the body, feelings, perceptions, often quite subtle, quite hard to see because we build up attachment to them and identify with them for so long, and they're so quick and subtle in our experience, we're often missing them. But in the end, we have to do the same job, same work with them. Ask yourself, do I really own this perception? And how many of our perceptions we've just inherited from other people or the environment and the things around us, from our culture, our education, just what we spend our time doing, what we like, what we don't like, what we find pleasure in, what we feel is good for us, what is bad for us, what we don't want, don't like. The perceptions that underlie this, you just build them up unconsciously over such a long period of time. Again, as you meditate, you're observing that, questioning that, investigating that truth. Perceptions about yourself. I'm this way, I'm that way, I'm this kind of person, I'm that kind of person, I'm good, I'm bad, I'm happy, I'm sad, I deserve better than this, I'm getting all the best, I am the best, I am the worst. These are constantly slipping under the radar. We don't notice our perceptions, how they form, how they continue, how they affect the way we think, the way we look at the world, our views. But as you start investigating them, questioning them, you can't help but notice one thing, is that they're very transient. They change. With age, with experience, they change. They trick us. They're fast. They come up really quickly. And half the time they're just in our unconscious mind or subconscious mind. We don't notice them. Sometimes you have to deliberately look at them. Like the body and feelings are fairly obvious. They still trick us as well, of course. They delude us. Perceptions, you have to sometimes make the effort to look into your perceptions about life, the world, yourself, what is good and bad, right and wrong, what you like, what you don't. Question them. Maybe even about Buddhism or meditation, your perceptions change. You have the thought, it's good, it's bad, I like it, I don't like it, I want to do it, I don't want to do it. It's easy, it's hard. How often our perceptions change about ourselves. I don't have much skill, I don't have much parami, I can't do it. I am skilled, I know much more than everyone else. So quick to arise and so quick to inform our thinking. And our thinking is like the slave of our feelings and perceptions. So as pleasant feelings arise, that will stimulate one kind of thinking, grasping at the pleasure, wanting more, thinking how to get more, how to keep it, how much I like it, how good it is. Unpleasant feelings, unpleasant perceptions, how I don't like it, I don't want it, I want to get rid of it. Love and hate. And how much the world, the experience of living in the world is, is just stimulating that all the time, because the world itself is constantly changing. And that's coming back to us through our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, smell, taste, and in the mind. Good things happen, bad things happen. People are pleasant to us, people are unpleasant to us. People are there, people disappear. We get what we want, we lose what we want. That's the nature of the world, isn't it? The Buddha was teaching us not to grasp these experiences and take ownership of them, because we'll suffer. What makes the Buddha happy is because he's seen through the transient, selfless nature of experience. And he was kind enough to leave these teachings. As humans, we've done our best for thousands of years to practice them, keep them alive through the practice, because in the end you can only really keep them alive doing the practice. Not turning our backs on them, not getting so bored with them that we just give up, lose interest, not getting deluded and straying into other things that are totally going to make us suffer. It's our good fortune that there have been enough practitioners from the time of the Buddha till now to keep them alive. So we have our chance to practice. Maybe another way to do it, you just ask yourself, what do I own in this world? If I own anything, I should be able to take it with me right through my life and then to the end of my life and then beyond. Again, material things are fairly easy to see. We don't own anything. We have to return it all to the world when we leave this world. But even before then, do you really own this body, feelings, perceptions, thought formations? So next time you're feeling or experiencing a bit of stress or suffering, that's the time to practice, isn't it? Bring up these reflections. Ask yourself, do I own this? Where does it come from? Is it really me? Often the more we attach to something, the more suffering we're creating for ourselves. So if you do experience some happiness in life, and there's plenty to have, to be experienced, the more you're setting yourself up to be disappointed when it fades, because it's impermanent. If you can know happiness as impermanent, not self, then when it fades, you just know, oh, it's faded, it's changed. It was like that. It was good, but then it's gone. The more we attach to excitement, stimulation, and always have to be getting the next hit of excitement or doing the next thing that brings us excitement, stimulation, then of course the more we're setting ourselves up to be bored. They're pretty much of equal value. Ajahn Chah used to say they're just equal value when you're mindful, because you know they arise, they pass away through different causes and conditions. The more you grasp and seek excitement, the more you're setting yourself up to feel boredom. The more you love, the more you're setting yourself up to hate. So he used to say, these are just the experiences of the world, but you don't have to grasp them and make them yours. You just know them and then let go. If you really want to see not self in the way the Buddha was teaching, you have to do this. Establish awareness, awaken your mind, question, look, learn, and then let go. The more you do that, the more your mind is going to experience the inner happiness, the inner peace. It just knows these things, they're just the conditions of the world. It's the kindest thing you can do for yourself. And if you can pass any of this on to someone else, it's the kindest thing you can do for them. Giving them the means, the tools to let go of their own suffering. It's another problem people say with the idea of not self or not attaching to self. They often say, oh, it feels really cold. It's like, if you just see everything as not self, then you just become indifferent to other people and the world. It's not like that. You understand how people get lost in the sense of self and then create suffering out of it. So you can give them some clues or some advice how not to do that. If you've had your own insight, then you can share that with someone else. And we do. When I was growing up, people used to say, when you get upset about something, they say, "Oh, just let it be." Simple words of wisdom are often some of the most effective. Let it be, let it go. It's just the way it is. C'est la vie, whatever. Every language has their ways of saying it. Thai used to say, "Mai pan rai, chen nan eng." In Laos they say, "Bo pen yang." French they say, "C'est la vie." In English we have all our own words. Let it go, let it be. So maybe I'll leave you with these reflections tonight.
Han Damayang Dhamma Kathaya Sadhukarang Dadamase Sadhu 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 Anumodaya